Chapter 123, Harmony News. Xiao Dingfei's low-key horse, which made a jingling sound when walking all the way, made people a little upset at first, but gradually got used to it, and even felt a strange pleasure, as if it had injected a touch of extraordinarily different colors into this monotonous and boring road. As it approached dusk, they finally arrived outside Tongzhou City. Zhang Xuning remembered the plan to cover the river with Zhang at noon, and said that he was about to enter the city, and he was a little nervous. Unexpectedly, Huang Qian, who was riding a horse, actually reined in the horse first, helped Feng Minjiao off the horse, and said to everyone, "Please rest outside the city for a while, and we will enter the city later." It was only a few hours from the capital to Tongzhou, but now it was a whole day. In the afternoon, not only Zhang Xuning and Zhang Sha, but also the Heavenly Sect's own sect members and those Zhongyang thieves who escaped from the prison all felt it. The speed of the team was very slow, as if they were waiting for something, as if they were worried about something. This made everyone muttered in their hearts. Especially those who have committed serious crimes and have a criminal record, even if they are a little dissatisfied, they have already gone outside the city gate, and they have changed their appearance. Everyone has divided into several groups and gone in separately. Why do you have to wait outside the city? What does this mean? Feng Minjiao and Huang Qian were the talkers of the Heavenly Sect, and once they robbed the prison without any trace of the public ceremony, they released everyone else in the heavenly prison, and naturally had the idea of wooing these people and taking them for their own use. It's just that when I heard this question, I still couldn't help frowning. The Heavenly Sect members naturally obeyed their words. So Huang Qian didn't worry about them, but just arched his hand towards the gang of people who escaped from the prison, and explained in a seemingly kind manner, "Don't be impatient, don't be impatient, this time is different from the past. The case of the Pingnan Wang and his party has just implicated the Yanji Marquis mansion, and we are waiting for the prison to come out of the prison. If only the people of my Heavenly Sect would of course enter the city directly, but all the heroes have criminal records, and once they escape from prison, they should be careful." The sentinel I taught had already set off in advance on the way to the city to investigate the news, and if he came back after a while, he said that the city was safe, and I would naturally enter the city. I also hope that you are good men, Hai Han. Someone had a temper and heard the meaning of the words, "Lord Huangxiang, this means that we have dragged down your sect." Huang Qian's complexion changed. Feng Minjiao was an old fox, and said with a smile, "I have no intention of doing this, it is really for the good of all the heroes." The man who spoke was stout, with angry eyebrows, and was obviously a bad-tempered man. But now the situation is really stronger than people. If there is no Heavenly Sect to rob the prison, they are still in the prison and waiting to die. Therefore, there are also smart and shrewd people who are afraid of any conflict here, so they hurriedly stopped this person, persuaded him with a smile, and became a peacemaker. Lord Huangxiang is also a famous hero in the rivers and lakes. Brotherly, what nonsense are you talking about? Besides, that's really not where they can talk. Seeing that the man surnamedly frowned and seemed to be still unconvinced, this person hurriedly glanced at him, and actually set his eyes on Men Yang, who had sat down silently next to him. At noon, when they stopped in the village halfway down the road, the prison uniforms on the crowd had already been changed. At this moment, Men Yang was wearing a gray robe. He was locked up in prison for a long time. The scars on his body could not be covered, extending from his chest to his neck, and his hair, which had been messy, was tied up with a cloth belt, revealing a peaceful face, and there was not much fierceness in his eyes, but he looked ordinary. He still heard this argument with a bit of sword spirit, but when everyone's eyes fell on his face, he raised his head a little incomprehensibly, smiled at everyone, and his 2 rows of teeth were snow white. "Why are you standing and not sitting?" This can be called an elegant and kind smile. However, all the people who saw this smile couldn't hold back, and shivered excitedly, feeling a little chill that they shouldn't have for no reason. The gang of vicious people who had escaped from the heavenly prison were speechless, and even though they were quite dissatisfied with the heavenly sect's slow behavior in their hearts, they all swallowed it, trembling and not daring to speak out, and obediently sat down in the wilderness on the outskirts. In the end, those who are horizontal are afraid of evil, and those who are evil are afraid of death. It stands to reason that these people didn't make trouble, and this Menyang didn't seem to care about anything. The heavenly sect should be happy, but Huang Qian and Feng Ming frowned quietly when they saw this. Zhang Xuning and Zhang Sha both took the scene into their eyes, but they glanced at each other very tacitly. The heavenly sect rescued these people to absorb them into the sect, but these people are all undisciplined and not easy to tame, but they secretly suppressed their dissatisfaction, although they didn't say it explicitly, but faintly they were led by this Menyang. The two of them were alone. After entering the city, the imperial court certainly had reinforcements, but the plan itself was risky, and no one knew what news the sentinels from the heavenly sect would bring back. What I am most afraid of is that the gang in front of me is ironclad and can't find a gap. But now that there are signs of mutual dislike, you can think about whether you can use your strength to find some unexpected opportunities. The two didn't speak, but they knew it. The heavenly sect wanted to stop, they didn't have any opinions, and they didn't dare to have any opinions. Dismount and sit with the crowd. Outside the city, where there were often people staying, and thatched huts were erected on the side, and the men tied their horses to graze, and when it was getting dark, a roaring bonfire was made outside. The blazing fire ignited, and it also dispelled a bit of the cold. When they left the village, they brought dry food and water bladders, and they all sat down around the campfire. Zhang Sha is cold and silent, but Zhang Xuning is a good speaker inside. After all, in his previous life, he also relied on a mouth to coax people. When others see such a good-looking person, they are willing to listen to her more. Originally, Xiaobao was sitting on the other side of her, but after Xiao Dingfei threw off the saddle, he came up and drove Xiaobao away, and sat beside Zhang Xuning cheekily. Zhang Xuning looked sideways at him as a scoundrel in his previous life, and felt funny. Dingfei Gongzi said that you are a good fate. I still don't believe it, but now I believe it. I have always heard that the heavenly sect has awe-inspiring righteousness, and shares the sorrows and joys with the common people of the world, but you look at it as a member of the heavenly sect who does not look like it at all. Xiao Dingfei rolled his eyes. Don't talk nonsense, my son looks prodigal on his face, and he also has the world in his heart. How do you say that? What is in the world first, and what is in the world after what is? Feng Minjiao and Huang Qian heard the sentence as soon as they walked over, and they felt a stream of blood and qi hit their heads. Feng Minjiao glared angrily. Huang Qian was also afraid that others would think that their heavenly sect members were like this, so he hurriedly came up and said, "It's the worries of the world first, and the joy of the world after the world, but the doctrine of the sect is the world is the same. We must not be joking with everyone, don't mind. Who can't see what kind of character Xiao Dingfei is? Some people don't smile, and some people nod their heads very facefully. Zhang Xuning belongs to the kind that gives face very much, and I don't know if I understand it or not, so I nodded anyway, and only said, that's really powerful, this is the ideal of the ancient saints." Huang Qingxin said that this little girl actually has a little knowledge, and was about to accept this compliment, but she didn't expect a sneer to come out of the oblique thorn, and said sarcastically, "What bullshit is in the world?" The voice was hoarse and gruff, hitting the eardrums. Zhang Xuning's eyelids jumped when she heard this, and she followed the prestige with everyone. It was Menyang before, and she didn't know where to get a jar of wine, and at this moment she was sitting by the bonfire, with a big heart, and she was actually drinking wine while saying this. Feng Minjiao's wrinkled face suddenly showed a little jealousy. Zhang Xuning couldn't quite see the depth of this person, and only intuitively felt a little dangerous. No one answered for a while. But what Menyang said just now really aroused the emotion of some people, and after a while, someone shook his head and sighed, and said, "Actually, what Menyashi said is not true. When I was still in prison, I heard that the family of the Marquis of Yanji was arrested and imprisoned in the prison. That's a loyal martyr who has won countless battles for my great Cottars, and he was imprisoned for no reason by being detained for being associated with the anti-party, and you came to rob the prison yesterday, but it was a step too late, and the Ho Mansion family was exiled to Huangzhou, which is really pitiful. Today's imperial court is dim, the taxes are heavier, the people are not happy, and what do you say about the world is the same. The name of the Marquis of Yanji's mansion is more or less known to the people of the Dogon dynasty. After all, in the early years, Hoya Yanmu led his troops to fight outside, repelled the repeated attacks of Yudi on the border, and made these barbarians afraid and surrendered to the great Cottars, which made the people have some days of rest and recuperation. There is finally business on the border. But lately, the life of the border merchants has become sad. It's okay not to mention this, but when you mention it, some people will inevitably think of some old things, and laugh and say, "I'm not afraid of your jokes." When Lao Tzu was forced to be the king on the mountain, he also thought about going down the mountain to join the army, and he was under the command of General Yan. I heard that although the little son of Yan is young, he is inheriting his father's will, and he is not weak. It's a pity that before he made the trip, he was arrested and imprisoned by the court bandits. Who would have thought, that he would meet General Yan in prison? Speaking of the back, it can't help but be a little bleak. Menyang was drinking his wine in the corner, but he didn't answer. The man surnamed Li, who had scolded Feng Minjiu and Huang Qian, had lost his temper again, and said disdainfully, "The court with the ability to resist foreign enemies, and the court without the ability to kill Zhongliang. Wow, what the fuck is going on? The Tatar envoys have all entered Beijing, and they dare to accept the princess who asks to marry our great Cottars for the purpose of making peace. It's just a fucking bullshit. Tatar, and princess." Zhang Xuning was listening to these people with her ears pricked up, and she wanted to know the inside story of the heavenly sect, but she really didn't expect that someone would mention the matter of harmony. The fingers holding the water bladder suddenly trembled slightly. The man was still scolding, "What kind of thing are Tatars? A barbarian who drinks blood. Lao Tzu is dead, and his wife still has to be left to his son. It is simply in vain. A few years ago, he knelt in front of us to beg for peace, and he also had to pay a tribute. Now that the Marquis of Yanji's mansion has fallen, all the demons and monsters have kicked their noses in the face, and the court is now a soft egg." Zhang Sha listened, remembering the ending of Shenzai in the previous life, and also remembered the coffin that the Manchu dynasty civil and military welcomed back in tears, and there was an imperial princess who would not laugh anymore. He closed his eyes, but he couldn't hold back, and turned his eyes to look at the girl beside him. She didn't even notice it. The man sat beside him, his long eyelashes covered with thick eyelashes, covering the brilliance under his eyes. The gentle cheeks, which were originally illuminated by the blazing fire, slowly faded from the blood, becoming fragile and pale. Maybe sometimes, it's not always easy to leave, right? Chapter 124, Design. In the Mingfeng Palace, the lights are brilliant. The palace people all stood in the faint flickering light and shadow, and the hall was piled up with many tributes from Fanbang, including precious whole ferret fur, a rare fist-sized pearl, and 9 rings carved from white jade. When they were illuminated by the light, they were all bright and shining on people's faces. When Su Shang'ai walked in from outside, she asked softly, "Where is the princess?" The palace people were still a little apprehensive, and said timidly, "Inside, I won't come out, and I won't let the slaves and maids go in to serve." Su Shang'ai felt a pain in her heart. She had grown up watching Her Royal Highness the eldest princess, and to say something disrespectful, she was treated as half a daughter, but now she watched the envoys from the Tartars toast with the Holy Lord on the top of the main hall, and in a few words she married the princess. "I'll go in and have a look." Su Shang'ai walked over and raised her hand to open the bead curtain. The window was not closed, but a cold wind blew in outside, and the beads on the curtain were cold, and when they were released, they crashed together, making a pleasant sound. But when Shenzai heard it, she felt that the sound was like ice cubes colliding together. The good-looking makeup in the daytime has been removed. The scar on the face that had been covered with cherry powder became particularly obvious on this plain white face, just like the so-called royal affection. After the big waves washed the sand on the ground, it finally revealed a little hideous and ugly ability. Shenzai saw Su Shang'ai's figure from the mirror, but she looked extremely calm, and even smiled faintly and said, "I'm fine, Su Shang'ai doesn't have to worry about me. If you go back and let the Queen Mother know, maybe she will trouble you." How could His Highness be like this in the past? At that time, he was arrogant and wanton, and he would say whatever he was happy, but now he is so calm when he encounters such a big thing. Shenzai didn't cry. Su Shang'ai almost had red eyes first, but she had always been a person with very strict rules, and she didn't want to show too deep emotions, so she endured it before saying, "I heard that His Highness didn't eat at night. I really can't rest assured. Let the kitchenette remake something, just drink a bowl of soup to warm up." Shenzai only looked at the scar on her face, gently stroked her fingertips, and lowered her eyes. "I can't warm my heart." Su Shang'ai's tears suddenly fell. Shenzai finally turned around and hugged the grandmother who watched her grow up, as if she wanted to draw some strength and warmth from her, but she avoided the topic of harmony, and asked instead, "Shang Yi, won't Ning Ning come tomorrow?" When the news came that she wanted to make peace with Tatar, Shenzai didn't cry or make trouble, and accepted it calmly. It was probably because she was so calm, but it aroused the rare guilt of Shen Lang, a brother, who only asked her if she had anything she wanted, and tried her best to satisfy it. She only said that she wanted to accompany the readers back to the palace to study. In order to make Shenzai happy, Shen Langdang even agreed to let the young lady who was originally selected to accompany her from various mansions enter the palace at night. But Zhang Mansion handed over the confession, saying that Zhang Xuning was sick and couldn't stand the wind and cold, and she was afraid of being sick to the princess, so she had to wait until she was well before entering the palace. Su Shang'ai also inquired and comforted her. Zhang Fu invited a good doctor to take a look, saying that although the disease is fierce, it has stabilized, and you will be able to enter the palace in a few days. Please don't worry. Shenzai felt empty in her heart. Ning Ning didn't come, and there was no difference between the other companions coming and not coming. Let alone. She curled her lips silently and said, "Yes, even Ning Ning has nothing to learn when she enters the palace now." Mr. Xia led people to settle the chaos of the heavenly sect, and he did not teach in the palace. When Mr. Xia comes back, her illness will be cured, maybe it will be just right. Su Shang'ai didn't know anything about the affairs in the court, so he had to nod and said, "It's better for your highness to think like this." Then, just like before, the pearl kui of Shenzai's portrait was removed. Long cloud-like hair fell down, but in the mirror was a pair of eyes that were calm and almost deadly.
星号
For the matter of the heavenly sect robbing the prison, there was really a discussion in the court. After all, no one expected that so many fugitives would run away with them at first. The plan was made by Xie Wei, and naturally it also attracted a lot of criticism. Although he has always been a civil official, some people have questioned his strategy and suspected that there is such an omission to let the tiger return to the mountain, so he naturally has to stand up and take the responsibility with all his might. In fact, this is also the purpose of Xie Wei. Gu Chunfang's recommendation of Zhang Sha to take risks and pretend to be from Tujinshan was a bad plan for him, and now he just took the opportunity of the DPRK and China to complain about this, and asked himself to take responsibility to track down the whereabouts of these gang and the Tianjia rebel party, and complete the net, so that he would naturally take this matter back into control. It's just that there is always a little bit of an accident. At the beginning, outside the ruined temple where Zhang Xuning and the others had settled, a large group of officers and soldiers had been stationed. The original dilapidated temples have been cleaned up. Jianshu walked back from the shadowy dry forest outside, raised his feet and stepped into the temple, and saw Sievapan sitting on a clean brocade mat in the corner, looking up at the headless bodhisattva, a pair of dark eyes half hidden in the shadows, obscure. He was dressed thickly, and his thin lips were bloodless. Although it is still peaceful, there is a little more frosty coldness between the eyebrows. Jianshu bowed and said, "I found the mark left by Xiaobao on the bark of a tree outside. There is indeed a woman walking with Zhang Sha, quite protected by the other party, or I am afraid that it is Zhang Er's girl. And walked with Zhang Sha and was quite protected by the other party. She wasn't worried about her safety. The bodhisattva only had a body and no head, and it looked particularly scary when the light was dim." Xiawei looked at it and only asked, "What else?" Jianshu hesitated, and his voice was a little lower. Xiaobao said that in addition to Huang Jian and Feng Minjiao, Ding Fei Gongzit also came this time. Sit cross-legged with your hands on your knees. His sleeve robe was wide and covered the back of his hands. The exposed fingers, while slender, are a little blue and white. The small wound on the abdomen of the ring finger of the right hand had been treated, and it had formed a bloody scab, and it no longer hurt much when it was placed on the knee. Hearing this name, Xiawei curled the corners of his lips. That's a coincidence. There is a bit of a sense of calm in the smile. Jianshu knew what the word coincidence meant, so he said, Dingguo Gong led the troops in front, and he also went straight to Tongzhou. The things you explained a few hours ago have been sent to handle it, and the news from Dingguo Gong has been delivered. If Xiao Dingfei was here, he was afraid to jump up when he heard this. How could the damn Xiao Dingguo Gong also get involved? This matter has to start from the day of the court meeting. Originally, the strategy of using Gong Gai Cheng as bait to lure the heavenly sect into the game was made by Xiawei alone, and Xiawei should clean up the forks except for some accidents. I don't want Dingguo Gong Xiao Yuan to jump out and say that Xiawei is a civilian official who has no ability to lead troops to fight, so it is better to be more secure by himself. The emperor thought about it too. With a wave of his hand, he asked Xiao Yuan and Xiawei to deal with the matter together, and simply divided the troops into two ways and tracked them separately, striving to use the least time to collect the net and capture the thief, arrest the felon, and rescue Zhang Sha who was involved in danger by the way. At noon, Xiao Yuan set off with his own soldiers. Xiawei followed behind without hurry. Jianshu was so worried. Xiawei only gave him some instructions, saying, there is no way to break into hell, and if he wants to find death, he must let him learn a lesson. After hearing the order, Jianshu was stunned. It's just that he has been following Xiawei for many years, and after calming down, he pondered it, and he was really scared into a cold sweat, and secretly said that this time he killed 3 birds with 1 stone, and he couldn't be good. Don't say it's Tianjiao and Xiao's, it's that Zhang Sha, and Mr. is. There was a fire in the temple, but it was cold when the wind blew in. Xiawei's face turned a little pale. The next moment, however, flushed a little, and he coughed with a frown, his shoulders shaking, and the shadows that stretched over the wall shook with him. So the one who stood still in the shadows became clear. It was a sword piano with clear eyebrows, wearing a dark blue suit, carrying a bow and arrows and quivers, standing behind Xiawei like a shadow. The sword book knows that his sword may not kill when it is unsheathed. But if the arrow of the sword and harp is off the string, It will definitely kill you. Asterisk. My sister's face is not very good, is it uncomfortable? Jiang Xuning listened to everyone still talking about the affairs of the government and the opposition, and had not said a word for a long time. When she heard such a voice of concern, she raised her head and saw a sky-high braid dangling in front of her. It's that young baby again. The other party's eyes were big, and he was squatting next to the fire to add firewood, and when he looked back at her, he seemed to be a little worried and asked. Jiang Xuning suddenly came back to her senses, thinking, Shen Zi's affair with her relatives was ordered by the emperor, and she was just an official lady at best. How could she influence the situation and prevent this from happening? It doesn't work. What's more, do you really want to go back to that prison in the capital for the sake of others? You must know that the opportunity must not be missed, and it will never come again. Maybe there will never be such a good opportunity again. It's something you can't control. It's not within your reach. This is the number of human lives. She told herself this in her heart, forcing herself to pull back the chaotic thoughts in her head, and subconsciously said, it's okay. Xiaobao was puzzled, blinked, and said, but you look like you're sick. Sick? Jiang Xuning remembered the plan with Jiang Sha. After entering Tongzhou City, she had to pretend to be sick, and then go to the hospital to see a doctor, spread the news, and then get out of danger, and then leave Tongzhou unconsciously and leave the capital. It's just right to pretend from now on. So she didn't bother herself, she just sat next to Jiang Sha with a coated look, smiled without much strength, and said, maybe the wind is blowing on the road, and I have some headaches. The girl's family is delicate, let alone Jiang Xuning? Everyone didn't think much about it at this moment, and thought it was normal. Xiaobao's eyes flashed and he was thoughtful. Xiao Dingfei was originally crowded around Jiang Xuning, and after raising his eyelids and seeing Xiaobao coming over to add firewood to the fire, he was really stunned, and quietly slipped away with his water bladder, and went to Fen Minjiao's side to ask, Uncle Zhou, hasn't there been any news from the city? I really can't wait. If this doesn't end quickly, I'm afraid I'll have to wait for the evil star. He was so panicked that he wanted to slip into the city at once. Fen Minjiao still remembered the ridiculous words on his road, his face trembled, and said, it should be soon. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sudden sound of footsteps in the darkness. All the people who had swords with them held down their swords at once. Huang Qian heard a whistle in the dark, quickly got up and suppressed everyone's reactions, and said with a smile, it's time for the sentry to come back, I'll take a look. Huang Qian walked over. A dark shadow spoke to him over there, handing him something. Huang Qian's body seemed to shake. He took the thing back and handed it to Fen Minjiao. It was a thin letterbox. Fen Minjiao didn't care about it at first, but when he opened the letterbox, pulled out the small page rolled up letterhead, and saw a small black emblem drawn on the upper right corner of the letterhead, the lines were smooth like mountains winding, and his complexion suddenly changed. When the letter was read, the pupils were even tighter. He had warned himself many times not to startle the snake, but his violently flickering gaze still drifted uncontrollably in the direction where Jiang Sha was. Jiang Sha was too far away, and only vaguely felt that the other party's gaze turned to his side. His heart sank slightly. Xiao Dingfei couldn't wait, and asked repeatedly, how is it, how is it? Fen Minjiao directly stuffed the letterhead back into the letterhead and put it in his sleeve, not letting others see the emblem. His heart turned in a hurry, but he walked back with a smile on his face, and said, let you wait for a long time, the sentinel will reply to the letter, everything is safe, everyone can enter the city. And all the people rejoiced, and they got up. Jiang Sha also stood up. Jiang Xuning felt an unspeakable uneasiness in her heart. She gently tugged at his sleeve, her lips opened, and before she could say anything, Fen Minjiao had already paced in front of them. A face turned away from the fire burning behind him, although he was smiling, but there was a bit of a madness in the shadows, and his posture was respectful. Lord John, let's go together.